The women mystics of Christianity lived courageous and often radical lives. They pushed the extremes of survival and challenged the societal norms and occasionally even had a willingness to die for their faith. They were rebels and renegades who helped shape Christianity as we know it today. These women sought a connection to God through prayer and devotional action, and in turn felt themselves to be recipients of divine, mystical messages. Mystics and visionaries have long been misunderstood by religion, and perhaps because these folks, these mystics, had little need for religious systems and the whole hierarchy. But no matter what religion says, God's mystical energy, spirit, has been in work, and it is noted in the Bible. In Joel we hear, "I will pour out my spirit upon all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your women and men will dream dreams, and your young men will see visions." And then in Job we hear that, "For God speaks again and again, though people do not recognize it. He speaks in dreams and in visions of the night. When deep sleep falls on people as they lie in their beds, he whispers in their ears." And here in Acts, we hear God says, "In the last days I will send my spirit on all men. Then your sons and daughters will speak God's word. Your young men will see what God has given them to see. Your old men will dream dreams." And hear words from Hildegard herself. "You understand so little of what is around you because you do not use what is within you." Friends, today we celebrate a rebel with a cause, Hildegard von Bingen. "I hear a voice speaking to me. The young woman whom you see is love. She has her tent in eternity. It was love which was the source of this creation. In the beginning when God said, 'Let it be,' and it was. As though in the blinking of an eye, the whole creation was formed through love. The young woman, God, is radiant in such clear, lightning-like brilliance of countenance that you can't fully look at her. She holds the sun and the moon in her right hand and embraces them tenderly. The whole creation calls this maiden lady God. For it was from her that all creation proceeded since love was first. She made everything love. Love was in eternity and brought forth in the beginning all holiness, all creature without any mixture of evil. Adam and Eve as well were produced by love from the pure nature of the earth. For you see, she is and always will be love." The music you just heard and this beautiful quote comes to us today from Hildegard von Bingen, a 12th century nun. Not words referring, note, to the sinfulness of man that we so often hear, but instead about a God who creates in love. For we were all created in and by love. Now one might think, given what it says in the Bible, that these thoughts would lead to blasphemy and in fact the church totally and completely excommunicating her. But that did not happen. In fact, the Pope had a little concern about Hildegard, that perhaps maybe God was speaking to her. So not only did he bless her, but he called her nun and called her a visionary of the Catholic Church. Popes weren't the only one who went to Hildegard for some guidance. Kings were known to go to her. Knights, before they went into battle, were known to go to her. She took very seriously the gift of being a mystic or visionary from God and included it in all that she did. So today we continue on this journey from St. Francis to Martin Luther King, today Hildegard, our rebels with a cause, who had a willingness to live into what it was that God called them to, even at the sake of disrupting the system. Now, something I want to note about all three of them is that when they went and challenged the system, all three of them found a level of acceptance in the system. Not only did they find acceptance in the system, but then they continued to challenge the system that they found themselves part of. I think that's an important message for us today, because sometimes we have to talk and be present with people that we may not necessarily agree with. But if we work together, that's when God truly goes to work. When we hold one another accountable, that's when God goes to work. Hildegard was born in Germany in 1098, the 10th child of a knight and lady. At a very young age, she began to have visions. In fact, at the age of 3, she had a vision of a cow that was giving birth to a calf in a few weeks, and she very clearly stated what that calf was going to look like, all the markings on the calf. Sure enough, the calf was born, and ta-da, looked just as she had said. She was very surprised to find out that others did not see these same visions that she was seeing. And soon, at the age of 3, she was identified and called a visionary. By the time she was 8, she was offered to a Benedictine monastery as an oblate, or one who was to live in service to God. This could have been a sacrificial offering, as she was the 10th child of this family, or it could have been that her parents saw that, in fact, as a visionary, she would not be the marrying type, and they decided she'd be better off in the church. Either way, she was put under the care of an older nun named Uda, and she herself was a visionary. Uda taught Hildegard to read and to write, to study the Bible, and encouraged her to work in the garden, as well as tending to the sick. Growing up, she developed a love for music, playing the psaltery and writing music. She would go on to write and play music the whole of her life. Much of her music is still available today. In fact, that song you just heard is from a CD called Visions, which hit the charts in the 1990s. So Hildegard made it to the Grammys in the 90s. A true Renaissance woman, long before the Renaissance, Hildegard's upbringing would lead her to a life of caring for others in the capacity of physician and healer. She would use her gardening skills to work with plants to concoct balms and remedies to help the sick. You know, to this day, botanists are studying her remedies and discovering plant properties that can still contribute to healing in this 21st century. When Hildegard was 38, Uda died, and at that time she was voted the abbess of her order. Not too long after that, she made the decision that it was time for her order to leave the monastery they were at and to start their own abbey in a town nearby. Her reasoning was in part political because she saw the monks and the officials had been working together in unsavory manners, and she wanted to have no desire or no part of that system, and she wanted to move away from these political norms. So she built her own abbey, and it soon filled with women, and it soon had a lasting impact on the community. Hildegard had visions the whole of her life, and these visions did not take the place of logic. She had a high intellect and understanding for science, and she believed that God was working in all these disciplines. Hildegard was known to say that all science is from God. Not just science, but our intellect is from God as well. Not only head intellect, but she truly believed in the intellect of the heart and how important it was referring to your heart when making decisions. Taking time to check in with all three of these elements would ensure that your experience was also God's experience. She loved creation, and with dominion care came responsibility for her and all of humanity to care for creation. But not only creation. Far beyond her years, she also went on to say that we have a responsibility to seek and to understand the universe. We all have a responsibility to seek the wisdom that comes in the universe. She believed that humanity was indeed made in God's image, and in fact, the very image of God. For we are called to mirror the divinity in our daily walk and the path for justice. Living in God's image, Hildegard believed that art was a way that humanity could participate in co-creating with God. She took this call very seriously as well and became an artist, creating mandalas and paintings and etchings. When she would write a book, by the way, 9 in all, she always took time to illustrate them, and in fact, one book has 36 paintings included. As mentioned before, she was a gifted poet and writer and musician, and in her lifetime even produced an opera. She believed that God worked through the creative energies of humanity to bring forth goodness in the world. The arts were an expression of God's desire for the world. Not only do we have a responsibility to develop intellectually, but also spiritually from within, and to share in artistic expression. In addition to these gifts, she was a great preacher as well. Most of her preaching was to clergy, and time again you see themes that I've discussed here: intellect, spirituality of heart, and artistic expression. But you always see her calling time and time again to her brothers and sisters to find a way to have justice for all people. She had no problem reflecting the abuses of the church in her preaching and addressing the political climate of the day. She had no problem challenging her colleagues to be part of a spiritual awakening. In 2012, the Catholic Church named Hildegard as a doctor of the church. This is an honor that's held by only 35 people, 4 of which are women. Perhaps in part this decision was made because Hildegard's vision for the world has a place in this 21st century. She was a liberated woman who danced the line of logic and rational intellect, as well as being mystical and spiritual. She had an understanding for the power of science and God's work in it, but also in God's work in us, God's working in humanity to bring healing and hope. She believed in the arts as a way God uses humanity to be co-creators, so we're all called to be artists in expressing ourselves. Thus, we are expressing God. She had a willingness to call to order those systems that at times get confused about what's really important. That is, to do justice and love kindness and to walk humbly with God. She called those in power to change their behavior in ways that would benefit the whole. Finally, she had this amazing ability to see and believe the mysterious miracles, the mystery of life that come with faith in God alone. Now, almost 1,000 years later, after she has lived, I believe that we too can learn from this liberated woman, one who found a way to devote her life to science and intellect and logic, as well as the mysterious energy of the Spirit and co-creating. This is all working together to make God's vision for this world come to fruition. Today, in closing, I wish to share with you some thoughts, and perhaps Hildegard has a message for you as well. She says, we cannot live in a world that is not our own, in a world that is interpreted for us by others. An interpreted world is not our home. Part of the terror is to take back our own listening, to use our own voice, and to see our own light. In light of where our world stands at this day, a government shutdown, women marching, all kinds of things going on within the church, perhaps now is the time for us to be logically involved, emotionally involved, and spiritually moved to bring the love of God into fruition in amazing, mysterious ways, following our rebels with causes. Amen.